Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. This is part of our E3 series on how we better mentor and support our students at MTSU. And today we are pleased to feature our University Writing Center under the leadership of Dr. James Hamby. So Dr. Hamby, thank you for being with us today. He's going to talk to us a little bit more about the University Writing Center and the services that you all provide. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Hi, so I am Dr. James Hamby. I'm from the University Writing Center, the Margaret H. Ordoubadian University Writing Center. We were founded in 1978. We are one of the oldest writing centers in the Southeast. We were founded at the suggestion of Dr. Margaret H, who was also a former director. So for the past 4+ decades, we have been helping MTSU writers grow as writers and grow as students. And in the time that I have been in the Writing Center, I have seen so many success stories, people who came to us frequently for help on assignments throughout different courses, people who are finishing their master's dissertation, their master's theses, their PhD dissertations, and everything in between. So we are very grateful that we can help MTSU students on their educational journey. What I want to do today to start out with is I want you to think of a time in your education when you struggled. Think of a time when you had a really hard time with something and you struggled through it. Did you fail? Did you pass? Did you just barely pass? And you're like, oh my gosh, I learned my lesson about that. But what did you learn from that struggle? What happened the next time that you were in the same type of situation, when you had a similar assignment or when you had another large writing assignment? I'm helping my daughter with her 6th grade math right now, and she's doing stuff that I didn't do until well into 7th and 8th grade. And she's struggling with it. She's struggling, with the basic algebra. And I remember being in her position, and I had to struggle through it, and it was so hard. But now that I'm going back, even though it's been many years, it's easier for me because I was able to get through that part of my education. And somehow or another, I haven't thought about algebra in many decades, but it stayed with me, and now I'm able to help my children as they're going through the same thing. But it's that struggle is how we learn, is how we get better. So I want to talk first about what exactly is a writing center. And it's funny because there are so many misconceptions from both faculty and students and other people about what a writing center is. One of the misconceptions that I was in this very room in a workshop, and a bunch of professors were talking about writing. And one person said, even Vanderbilt has a writing center now. And the insinuation was that student writing is so poor that even at elite universities, they have to have writing centers. But writing centers, you'll hear me say this probably a couple more times, are not just for bad writers. Writing centers are for everyone. Another interesting situation that I was involved in happened over in the Writing Center back over there. A professor who was new to the university came by, wanted to learn more about the Writing Center. So she was asking me about a lot of questions about how we functioned and what we did. And then she stopped. She got this kind of sly look on her face, and she said, "Now, do tutors ever write papers for the students?" I said, no, the tutors will not write papers for the students. They are only there to help the students. And that seemed odd to me, but I researched that, and apparently that is a misconception that some people still have, is that the tutors will write the papers for the students. I assure you we don't. Another unfortunate situation that I have encountered every now and then is that the Writing Center is a place for discipline. It's a place for punishment. Sometimes professors will send their students there and they'll say, you need to go to the Writing Center, like it's going to time out. But we should not be seen as a place of punishment. We should be seen as a place of help. Sometimes students also have misconceptions. Every now and then I'll hear a tour guide here in the library, and they'll say, oh, if you go to the Writing Center, they guarantee that you'll get an A, or they guarantee that you'll get 1 letter grade higher. And I'm like, no, I'm off to the side. No, we don't guarantee that. I firmly believe we will help you do better. I firmly believe that seeing us constantly will help your grades. but we can't guarantee that somebody is going to get an A. We can't guarantee what another professor is going to do. But oddly enough, when talking to other writing center directors I know at different institutions, they will report the same thing. So this seems to be this pervasive myth going around that somewhere out there, there's a writing center that guarantees an A, but that's just not true. A more prevalent, a more common misconception about the writing center is that we're a fix-it shop, that students come in and that we're going to sit there, we're going to move the commas around, we're going to explain the wonders of grammar all in 1 hour, and then everything will be perfect for the rest of their lives. But we're not really a grammar fix-it shop. We are happy to work with grammar, but we're going to do more than that. A lot of times students come in and on the appointment form that they make, they'll say that they want to work with grammar and flow. And at this point now, it's almost, we joke around with each other. It's like, oh, it's grammar and flow, because that's such a common thing for students to want to work on. And a lot of times people equate grammar with good writing, but good writing is so much more than just that. Another misconception that students come in that we have to work with tutors, we have to train them how to deal with this, is that the tutor is just going to tell them what to do. Like the tutor is an authority figure, like a teacher, like an instructor in a classroom, and the tutor is just going to tell them what to do. But that's not exactly true. The student at all times is in charge of the session. The student leads the way with what they want to work on, and they retain ownership of the paper. They retain ownership of their time, and the tutor is there to support them, to help them out. So what we do in writing centers is that we kind of erase this hierarchy that students are so used to, and we make it more student-centered, and we make it a collaborative process. Writing centers are founded on something called collaborative learning, where peer mentors, peer tutors, people in the classroom, they help each other out. And this is the approach that we take in our writing center sessions. It's not a tutor filling a student's head with knowledge. It's helping them explore what they want to do to make their paper better. One of my favorite pieces of writing center scholarship is an oldie but a goodie. It's from the 80s. It's from someone named Jeff Brooks. It's called Minimalist Tutoring, Making the Student Do All the Work. And Jeff Brooks begins this piece by telling a story about a time when he was a young tutor and a student came in and he helped her spruce it up a little bit, fix the commas, move things around, and she got an A. And she came back in to show him her paper and about how she got an A, and they were both excited. And he says, even though this produces a good feeling, this is not a good situation. Says when you improve a student's paper, you haven't been a tutor at all, you've been an editor. Telling a student what to do is not going to help them learn. He goes on by saying, we must not become editors for our students, and that the goal of each tutoring session is learning, not a perfect paper. And sometimes people do not want to hear this. They want to hear, no, I came to the writing center, I want to get an A on this paper, I want that guaranteed, tell me what to do. But we can't tell you what to do every single time. You have to learn that for yourself. So some truisms in the writing center world. Number one, and this is a saying you hear a lot, writing centers make better writers, not better writing. And what we mean by that is that our focus should be on the student, our focus should be on the process, not just on the product. If you focus on the student, if you focus on the process, it will produce a better product. But the idea is that we need to look at writing skills that they're going to use in the next writing situation and the next after that. Number two, and I like to tell this to people as much as I can, the writing center is for everyone, not just bad writers. No matter how good of a writer you are, you will benefit from having another pair of eyes on your paper. No one is a perfect writer. No one has ever written an essay perfectly the first time. Professional writers will tell you that they don't just sit down, are filled with inspiration and just, type away. They work at it. Hemingway rewrote the ending, I think, of The Sun Also Rises 36 times because he wanted to get the words exactly right. And working with someone else, bouncing your ideas off of someone else, having them read aloud the paper to you. And this is one of the things we do in the Writing Center. When a student comes in and they sit down with the tutor, either the tutor or the student will read the paper out loud. This helps you to hear what it may be like for your audience. It helps you to hear mistakes you may not have noticed. Maybe it helps you to hear how great it is. But having someone else working with you is going to benefit everyone. And I mentioned earlier, we don't just have freshmen who come into the Writing Center. We work with graduate students. Freshmen are the largest group we work with, but graduate students are actually the second largest group. We have faculty members who come in. We are open for faculty and staff to come in and work with us as well. We have faculty members who come in and work on their peer-reviewed journal articles that they're going to submit for publication. So the Writing Center is for everyone, not just for bad writers. When I was a freshman in college, I was so resistant to revising because I thought I was a strong writer and I thought I could get it right just the first time. And now that I look back, I realized I was also kind of lazy. I didn't want to have to go back and do something again. I wanted it one and done, get it out of the way. But the writing process is something that's important for students to learn, and everyone can become a better writer. There's more to good writing than just grammar and flow. And this was what I was alluding to a moment ago. A lot of people know that they need to have better writing, or a lot of students will turn in something that they think is good, but then they'll get a C or a grade that they don't like. But they don't quite understand what it is they did to get that grade, and they don't quite understand what it is they need to do to improve in their writing. So a lot of times, grammar and flow are just kind of catch-all phrases that can mean a lot of different things. I've seen students refer to grammar when they mean things like spelling or word choice. I've seen people talk about flow, and a lot of times they mean organization. So kind of putting a word to what it is that a student wants to improve on can sometimes be a difficult thing to do. But we teach our tutors to consider things called hawks and locks. Hawks are higher order concerns and locks are lower order concerns. So I think, and I tell tutors this, I think that tutoring is one of the greatest intellectual challenges that you can have, because somebody who's a complete stranger comes in with a piece of writing you've never seen before, and you have to build a rapport with them. You have to get them to trust you. You have to demonstrate to them that you are, in fact, an expert, or at least, knowledgeable enough to help them with their assignment. You have to assess their writing on the fly, and then you have to come up with an idea of what you want to work with on them, what you're going to tell them about how to make revisions, and you're going to have to give them space to make their own decisions and to lead the session in the own way that they want to go as well. So I think it's a huge intellectual challenge. But one of the things that's imperative in a tutoring session is that the tutor and the student have to agree to an agenda of what they're going to work on for the 45-minute session. And the way that we look at an agenda is we identify hawks and locks. Higher order concerns are mostly content, organization, following the assignment sheet, and sometimes lack of citations, like a severe lack of citations, like if they're missing. So content is kind of a broad term, but what's in the paper? Does the paper make an argument? Does the paper have supporting details for the argument? And then once you have things like that, then you look at the organization. How's the paper organized? And organization can be very tricky depending on what subject it is you're working with. The organization of an English 1010 or an English 1020 paper is completely different from a biology lab, or maybe a business paper, or some other discipline with some other assignment where the organization can be very different. Following the assignment sheet, I like to tell my tutors when they're being trained that this is an issue that pops up a lot more than you would think, because sometimes a student will misread something, or sometimes they will misunderstand something, or for whatever reason, they are not following the assignment sheet. So the highest value thing that the student and tutor can work on is making sure that the essay fits the assignment. And then lack of citations, like when there are no citations, or there are no quotation marks around words that have been taken from somewhere else, something big like that. We try to avoid the P word. We try to avoid plagiarism because we don't like to scare people, but we do help students work on, proper citations. Lower order concerns are things like grammar. Sometimes I say this and people get really shocked and really offended. I'm not saying that grammar doesn't matter, but sometimes it is a lower order concern because sometimes professors may feel that their students have never been taught grammar, but they have. It's just sometimes it needs to be reinforced. Mechanics, formatting, things like this. Formatting is easily fixed. If something doesn't have the header in the right place or doesn't have the last name and the page number at the top, that's an easy fix. They can learn that quickly. Minor mistakes in citations. So major mistakes in citations, like when citations are missing completely that constitute plagiarism, of course, those are higher order concerns. But minor mistakes in citations, you have a period instead of a comma. You put it's APA and you put the author's full first name instead of just the initial, or little things like that, things that are easily corrected. Those are lower order concerns. Now, sometimes when making the decision of what to work on, whether to focus on higher order or lower order concerns, it depends on how much time the student has to revise. Sometimes a student will come in an hour before their paper is due. And maybe they have a lot of problems with content and organization and grammar and mechanics. Well, then the tutor has to pick something to focus on. So maybe they just focus on content, or maybe 1 hour before it's due, they notice that the student did not fulfill the assignment sheet. So they will spend that time, that 45 minutes, to make sure that that paper meets the assignment sheet. And then they may not even get to something like grammar. That doesn't mean that grammar is unimportant. That doesn't mean that the tutor was unaware of grammar. It just means that they couldn't get to it that time. We like to tell students, come early and come often. The sooner you can come to work on an assignment, the earlier in the writing process, the more we can help you. So if you come as soon as you have a draft done, or if a student comes as soon as they have a draft done, then we can look at the content organization, make sure it follows the assignment sheet, do all of that big stuff first, do all that heavy lifting. Then after the student revises, if they still have time, they can come in and then we can focus on the lower order concerns. It's just a form of triage, right? And a lot of times people say, oh, you shouldn't talk about assessing student writing as triage or as a medical thing. And I don't mean to indicate that, but it's looking at what needs the greatest amount of revision first. And then sometimes there are mocks. I went to UTC, so I like to point out the mocks, right? Yeah, the mocks won the NIT, just throwing that out there. So sometimes there are medium order concerns. Hawks and locks are not fluid. They're not set in stone. They are fluid. Sometimes what is a lower order concern in one paper will become a higher order concern in another paper. I've been talking about how grammar is usually a lower order concern. But if grammar has so many problems, it gets to the point where it obscures meaning, then it does become at least a mock, at least a medium order concern, or sometimes a higher order concern. If a student is an English language learner, and the thing they need to focus on most is learning English grammar and syntax, then yes, that is a higher order concern. I like to tell tutors that every tutoring session is different, and it really is. Every student comes in with their own set of needs, their own set of experiences, their own set of expectations, and it's the job of the tutor to kind of figure that out as they go along and to determine what is a hawk, what is a lock, how much time they have to work on these things. But as always, we like to make sure that this student is in control at all times. So this Students are never going to just come in and say that they want to work on something, and the tutor will say, no, we're going to work on something else. A tutor may recommend, we're going to work on something in addition to what you want to work on. We're going to get to what you want to work on, then we're going to look at some other things too. And a lot of times students are very okay with that. Okay, another popular saying in writing centers. So you've probably heard the saying, you give a person to fish and they eat for a day, but you teach a person to fish and they eat for a lifetime. This is very much the idea behind writing centers as well. And this is what Jeff Brooks was talking about in the quotation from the article that I had a few minutes ago. That if you fix a paper for a student, they're not going to learn anything from it. But if you teach them how to fix it themselves, if you teach them how to identify the issue, and you give them strategies for how they are going to fix it, then that's going to help them. I remember one time when I was a tutor, I had a student come in and we read through their first paragraph, and I noticed they did not have a strong thesis statement. So at that point, I could have said, you don't have a thesis statement. You need to make a thesis statement that says exactly what your main argument is. But instead of doing that, what I did and what we train tutors to do is I asked them, what is your main idea? What is your thesis statement? And then sometimes, students will stop and they'll look for a minute. They'll say, oh, I don't have one. And then you're like, yes. And this is so much more impactful than just saying, you don't have this, you need to come up with it. They start thinking about it themselves. One time I had a student who we spent a long time before he realized that he did not have a thesis statement. And maybe we spent a lot of time coming to this conclusion, but that's something that is going to stay with him in his next writing assignment, his next writing context. Okay. Focusing on higher order skills the students need in order to be successful in academic and professional writing contexts will give them the communication and critical thinking skills they need to be successful in life, whatever it is they choose to do. Okay. Another way that I like to think about writing centers personally is as a literacy sponsor. Students come to universities and they have their coursework, and that's an important part of their university experience. But going to college is so much more. And we try to be supportive of literacy in all aspects of their life. There are a few ways we do this. First of all, we have different speaking and writing groups, and we've had different ones throughout the years. In the past, we've had professional writing groups that talked about strategies for professional writing, resumes, cover letters, things like that, graduate school applications. We've had graduate writing groups where students will get together and they'll encourage each other as they work on their theses and their dissertations and their seminar papers. For a very long time, we've had a creative writing group that gets together and they share their poems, plays, short stories, lyrics, whatever it is they're writing on. That's been going strong for a number of years. Also, for a very long time, we've had what's called Culture and Conversation. It's a place for English language learners to come in and practice their English skills in a relaxed atmosphere. A new one that we've added, this semester we're calling it Tacos and Trauma. Last semester in the spring, it was Pizza and Trauma. The pizza and the tacos part are because they meet at lunchtime and we provide food for them. And then the trauma part is because it focuses on trauma survivors and it gives them a free space to write about their lives. They don't have to write about their trauma. We're not, a trained therapy group. They're just writing about life. Some topics that we've explored this semester are about memory, love, growing up, things like that. So people are free to write about whatever it is they want to write about. We also have a trauma-informed podcast that is done by our assistant director, Dr. Zabby Myers. We engage in a lot of scholarship, both the administrators, Zabby and myself, and our tutors. We are constantly involved in the Southeastern Writing Center Association and the Tennessee chapter of that and the International Writing Center Association. We go to the conferences. We just recently hosted Tennessee Tutor Collaboration Day, which is where administrators and tutors and writing centers across the state, we got together on Zoom. We just talk about what's going on in our writing centers. Tennessee Directors Day, which is just for the directors. And one of our students right now is putting together a panel presentation for the Southeastern Writing Center Association's conference in February. And they're doing a really great job right now, leading and coming up with their own scholarship. In the past, our tutors were the guest editors for a journal called The Dangling Modifier, which is, I know it's a fun name, is a student-led academic journal where everything is done by student tutors. So we were guest editors for that, and we're just always being constantly engaged in the Writing Center world. We offer class visits and workshops. So instructors will request that we do a 45-minute workshop on things like MLA or APA citation, the writing process and writing personalities, on essay organization, things like that. And then we also have 10-minute class visits, and I'm going to run through a quick class visit so you can kind of see how we reach out to students, and we like to be involved in people's classrooms as much as possible. Every summer I offer the thesis and dissertation writing retreat. It is a 4-day writing retreat where we have guest speakers, we have writing time, and we focus on getting through the huge obstacle of getting a thesis or a dissertation done. One of the things that's very cool about our writing center is that we have our own literary journal. It is now in its 11th year. We're now accepting submissions for it. It's the Off-Center Literary Magazine. It's online. It's published by the libraries, the MT Open Press. So you can find it there. And then also we just have open mic nights. We had one before Halloween. It was a spooky open mic. We had Mary Leosin, who is a horror writer who also had a book just published by the MT Open Press. And then students got up and they read some of their things, and we ate food and we had a great time. So we usually have an open mic once a semester. And all these things are the things that we do beyond just tutoring, because we want to serve this community and students and make literacy a meaningful part of their lives. So we are a literacy sponsor as well. One of the things that we did last semester was we wrote our own mission statement. This was written by our tutors. Every week our tutors have a peer mentor meeting where they get together and they talk about, the highs and lows of tutoring that week. We give them academic articles to read and to discuss, and they just kind of focus on improving as tutors. And we also like to give them little tasks to do to make them feel that they are owners of the Writing Center as well, and not just employees there. So what each group did was each group wrote a mission statement, and then I just kind of merged them all together. I identified common themes, but this is completely tutor generated. It's worth reading. At the Margaret H. Ordoubadian University Writing Center, we empower members of the MTSU community to develop an understanding of themselves as writers, to find their unique voice, and to gain confidence in the writing process. We acknowledge the injustices experienced by our peers, and we work to counter inequality by identifying the different needs of each student. We sponsor literacy as a way to uplift individuals and communities, and we advocate for writing as a means of personal and intellectual growth and as the foundation for student success. So I hope this gives an idea of who we are as an institution, the types of things that we try to accomplish. And then another thing that our peer mentor groups wrote as well were session learning outcomes. This is what we want to happen after each session. And these are kind of based on learning outcomes that instructors might do for individual class periods. So in each session, this is our goal. After each session, students will gain increased confidence in themselves as writers, a deeper understanding of techniques, resources, and strategies, and knowledge of how to apply what they have learned to future writing projects. So every time a student comes in, this is what we want to happen, not just moving the commas around. Okay, so how do we reach students? Class visits and professor recommendations are the best way that we have to reach students. I feel like every semester I meet someone who is a senior and they'll say, I never knew the Writing Center existed. And I'm like, how? We try so hard to tell everyone about us. I go to all the summer orientations. We have booths, at the beginnings of both semesters at a bunch of different events, but we still somehow just slip through the cracks. I think probably because at orientation or in a freshman's first semester, they're just bombarded with information. So it's just noise. So really the best way we can get recommendations, or the best way that we can get students into the Writing Center, is through professor recommendations. So if you're an instructor and you want to help us out, please tell your students about the Writing Center. Or you can send me an email and I'll send a couple of our tutors to come to your class to tell students about the Writing Center. This is what they're going to tell them. Okay, so the Writing Center is located in the Walker Library, room 362. It's the third floor, directly above Starbucks. If you can find Starbucks, you can find us, and that usually gets a laugh. You can find us online. Our days vary each semester, but just so you know, this semester we are open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 for face-to-face appointments. They were also open for online appointments Monday through Thursday, 9 to 7, Friday, 9 to 5, and then also on Sunday from 2 to 7. And so hopefully, no matter when a student needs to come to the Writing Center, there will be a time that's convenient for them. How we work with writers, and you've heard me say this, we work with writers at all stages of the writing process, at all disciplines, at all levels. We want to emphasize the idea all. Another misconception about the Writing Center that I experience a lot is that we are just for English 1010 and English 1020. We're just for those first year courses. But we are for all the courses that a student may take that involve writing. We hire a staff from across the university so that they are familiar with the types of writing students do in different disciplines. We have a few graduate students who come to us from the English department as a part of their assistantships. But then we have currently theater majors, psychology majors, a forensic science major, a fashion design major, and just a lot of different types of tutors who are able to help with different types of writing. And a lot of times, students will want a tutor who specifically knows their discipline, and we do the best we can to try to match them together. But sometimes it just doesn't work out. But at the end of the day, writing is still writing. You still have to have clarity in your sentences. You still have to have audience awareness. You still have to have a defined purpose. So we like to tell our tutors that even if you're an English person, you can still learn how to help tutors with lab reports. And we give them a lot of support and a lot of training for how to do those things. Okay. If it's any type of writing, we can help. And it's not just essays. We work a lot with e-portfolios, with PowerPoint presentations. We work with speeches. We have a smart board. If a student wants to come in, they can practice their speech and they can go through it. We have a back room where people can practice giving their speeches as well. Discussion posts are very popular. I've mentioned theses and dissertations. Oh, and creative writing. It doesn't even have to be for a class. As long as you are a registered student at MTSU, you can use the Writing Center. If you are writing a novel just for your own purposes, you can bring that novel in and you can work with someone and we can help you out. We also help out with graduate school applications. So if you are graduating soon and you're applying to a bunch of different universities, we can help you with that application. We can help you put together a resume if you're graduating or not, and you're just applying to jobs around in your field or whatever. We can help you with those personal projects as well. Okay. Our Writing Center is unique in that we offer 3 different types of sessions. The first is the traditional face-to-face session. They're all 45 minutes long. That's when a student comes in, they sit down with a tutor, and they work through their paper together. We also have an online live chat, which is kind of like a Zoom. It has audio and visual capabilities. So if a student can't make it to campus, but they want to talk with someone face-to-face, we still have that option. And then the last type that we adopted during the pandemic and has been wildly popular is the document drop. So in the document drop, you make an appointment, you upload a paper, a tutor will spend 45 minutes making comments on it, and then they will email it back to you. So this is a very easy and very convenient way for you to get another pair of eyes, or for students to get another pair of eyes on their paper before they turn it in. And this is great for professors to tell their students about too. You can say, well, maybe you go to school all day in the morning, and then in the afternoon you have to go to work, and then you can't, start working until nighttime. But if you can get your essay done, you can get a doc drop session, then the tutor can make comments on it, and then once you're ready to work on it, you can start working on it. And now approximately 50% of our tutoring sessions are document drops now. So they are, like I said, very popular. And we also like having document drops because of students who work, or non-traditional students who can't make it to campus, or students who are completely online. This is our way of still being able to reach out and help as many students as possible. Okay, so like I said, come early, come often. We offer up to 1 appointment per day. So if you have an essay due in a week and you get a draft done, you can come in and you can see us 6 times. And you can get a lot of work done on that. A lot of our tutors will tell you that one of their favorite sessions to do is a brainstorming session. You don't even have to have anything written to come to the Writing Center. You can just come in with an assignment sheet and say, I have no idea how to get started. And the tutor can sit down with you and start brainstorming and get a lot done. And our tutors love those sessions. Okay, be detailed when you're making your appointment. Tell us what it is you want to work on. Maybe your strengths, maybe your weaknesses, the feedback that you've gotten in the past. Bring your assignment sheet and have an open mind. We try a variety of strategies to help you. Okay. So I talked about some other ways that we support MTSU writers. One way I didn't talk about was our writing partnership. The writing partnership is a really great program for students who are working on longer projects, students who are international students and are learning English, or just anyone who wants to have another pair of eyes on them to hold them accountable once a week. So it's a standing appointment at the same time every week with the same tutor. And if someone's working on a thesis, then they can say, okay, I'll have 5 pages for you the next time I come. And that helps them to stay on track. I know when I was writing my dissertation, I needed that kind of structure. So that's very popular with a lot of different people. All right, so you can connect with us. This actually needs to be updated. We dropped our Facebook, but we are on YouTube, we're on Instagram, and we're also on Blue Sky. So like us and follow us. Okay, and now whenever I tell people that I work in writing centers, they want to talk about AI. What has AI done to the Writing Center? Writing centers are still relevant in the age of AI. Writing centers have not gone away. It does create several challenging issues for us, but we're still around. So whenever talking about writing and AI, I like to tell people, imagine you created a workout robot. You hate working out, but you know that working out is important. So you create a robot to work out for you. Right? They go to the gym, they do all the weights. Then you say, look, I worked out. It doesn't exactly work that way. The point of working out was never to make the weights go up and down. The point of working out was to do it yourself so that your muscles will strengthen and grow. And of course, that's the way I view AI and writing. AI has a lot of wonderful uses in a lot of other fields, and I don't doubt that at all. But in terms of the field of writing, I'm going to say that we need to stick with using our own brains, using our own cognitive functions, and not just outsourcing our brains to AI. Instructors don't assign writing because the world needs one more essay about a rose for Emily. Right? The world does not need one more literacy narrative. The world does not need one more narrative about an important memory that you had. Instructors assign writing so that students can grapple with new information, synthesize information, formulate their own thoughts, consider their audiences, and put their ideas into their own words. These are high level, high impact cognitive functions that outsourcing to AI is not going to help with. Don't Don't you hate English professors who talk about Dead Poets Society? I always feel corny whenever I bring this up, but I do love that movie. And there's one line from that movie that has really stayed with me throughout my career as an educator. The purpose of education isn't teaching students what to think, it's teaching them how to think. Right? This is the foundation of education, is teaching students how to think. How do you guide them to do that? How do you promote curiosity? How do you teach critical thinking? How do you teach them to synthesize ideas? How do you teach them to be creative? And you can do all those things, but it's very difficult. Okay. All the things AI does for students, and you see this a lot, things that AI advertises, it reads and summarizes the assignment sheet. It'll brainstorm and give different options. It can create a research plan. It builds an outline. Of course, we know it writes the actual paper. It can correct grammar and mechanics, and it can change the tone. But I'd like to argue that all of these things are the assignment. Maybe AI will come up with a great product, but we need to focus on the process because that's what helps the student. Reading and summarizing the assignment sheet, well, this is the first step that an instructor has to bridging, the content to the student. The student needs to read through the assignment sheet, and they need to think about what it is that the instructor wants, what they've been talking about in class, what they've been reading. And this is the first step of the creative process to creating a paper. Brainstorming, coming up with different paths that the student could take for writing this paper, coming up with the different options, weighing them in their mind, figuring out what's the best path to choose. That's the assignment. Creating a research plan, and this is a lot of times where I think there's some gray area with what can AI do. And then there are some other gray areas, like, well, if I search paper ideas for Hamlet into Google, well, I'd be okay with that. And maybe typing that into AI, maybe that's no worse. But creating an entire research plan instead of a student coming up with their own research plan. And sometimes it is more efficient to have AI come up with a research plan, but that failure, that struggle, oh, I spent, 3 hours looking up a bunch of articles that I'm not going to use. That still has value in cognition. That still has value as a part of education. Is looking at something and rejecting it, and then starting over and finding something that is better. Building an outline, and this is something that for me is a huge part. Looking at outlining and organization, I think that's a huge part of individual creativity within writing. So a lot of people say, oh, well, I just used AI to build an outline. I didn't use it to write it. Well, maybe, but that's a huge task. That's a huge part. And the organization affects the content, and the content affects the organization. So I think people need to build their own outlines. Of course, writing the actual paper, that's not going to help anyone. Correcting grammar and mechanics, well, maybe that's not so bad, but then people will never learn how to do it themselves. Then the last one is changing tone. And I've seen demonstrations of AI do this, where they say, oh, make my tone more academic. And it does it badly at this point, but it's really hilarious if you tell AI to write like an English professor, then it'll sound like bad Shakespeare. We don't always talk that way. But changing the tone, I think, is one of those things that people don't think it's a big deal, but really it is. Because when you think about word choice and how that word choice affects your audience, this is a very important part of language and communication and critical thinking and creativity that is at the very heart of writing. So I think even just that feature can be something that's really bad for a student's ability to learn. So like I said, papers aren't assigned so there can be one more paper in the world. They're assigned for the process. Writing is a high impact pedagogy. And once we have, machines that can do it for us, then students are missing out on that learning aspect. Don't just take my word for it. There is an increasing body of scientific literature that shows how bad it is to offload cognition onto other functions. Here's a study from the Swiss Business School. It's found that increased reliance on artificial intelligence tools is linked to diminished critical thinking abilities. Going through this, this is a person who writes on education. She says, just as there is no such thing as a safe cigarette, there's no such thing as safe AI, particularly for children. I like this quote right here. The phrase artificial intelligence is deployed when the people building or selling a particular set of technologies will profit from getting others to believe that their technology is similar to humans. They're deployed to schools not for improving learning. They're there to exist profit. And then this came out just last week, or earlier this month anyway. It is a study from MIT. It's worth reading it. As the educational impact of large language models use only begins to settle with the general population, in this study, we demonstrate the pressing matter of a likely decrease in learning skills based on the results of our study. The use of LLM had a measurable impact on participants. While the benefits were initially apparent as we demonstrated over the course of 4 months, the LLM group's participants performed worse than their counterparts in the brain-only group at all levels, neural, linguistic, and scoring. So in terms of looking at what AI does to writing, it is far better to bring a paper into the writing center and to work with a tutor and to see how your ideas bounce off of them and for them to give you ideas and to do all this work in your head instead of writing a prompt and then having it spit it out. So in terms of writing, and of course that's a hard sell for students sometimes because they just want to get it done and they just want to get their paper and go along their way, and we all get that. But if we are going to promote deep level learning, deep impactful pedagogy, then we have to maintain writing as something that should be done by a human. On the bright side of things, and this paper hasn't been published yet, and I hope it will be soon so I can start citing it, is I serve as a reader for a writing center journal, and somebody has written a paper that shows that students who initially use ChatGPT and other generative AI, initially they used it a lot and they turned it in a lot, but then they got fed up with it because they weren't happy with the results. So now maybe they haven't given up using it completely, but they're doing more of their own writing and they're going back to the writing center. So maybe they're just using it to generate ideas, but then after that, they're actually choosing to do their own writing themselves. And it may be that one day generative AI will write beautiful prose, but that has not happened yet. Right now, it's still very formulaic, still very uncharacteristic, still very easily identifiable. But as I've been saying, more importantly, it just does not help students. So I want to leave you with this thought, and this is what I say at the end of all of my little speeches whenever I talk to freshman orientations. Writing is more than just a soft skill. I actually really hate it when people refer to writing as a soft skill. Writing is more than just a soft skill. It teaches students to think about and interact with the world. It promotes critical thinking, synthesis of ideas, original thinking, creativity, and communication. The skills encompassed by writing are the very foundations of education. I've been saying that writing is a high impact pedagogy. Writing stimulates students' brains in ways that few other things can do. So writing is going to be at the very heart of education. And this is why it's so important for students to come to the Writing Center, whether they're good writers or bad writers, whether they're PhD students or whether they're freshmen, because everybody can come to the Writing Center and learn something about the writing context and how to get better. Okay, so that's all I have for today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone on Zoom. If you have any questions, please let me know, or you are welcome to contact me at any time. I'm at james.hamby@mtsu.edu.
So for our participants in the Zoom room, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat and we would address it accordingly. in the meantime, to add to what you said about AI, I just put an image in the chat that I saw on LinkedIn some time ago about an MRI scan of someone who uses AI versus one that doesn't, and the brain activity looks very different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's just to add to what you said about AI and writing.
That's right.
Yeah.
You'll have to send that to me.
I
like
will.
to say that. Yeah.
Can faculty submit to the off center as well?
Yes, faculty can submit to Off Center as well. Off Center is for the MTSU community, so students, staff, faculty members, your brother who went here 10 years ago but left without taking a degree, anyone who's loosely associated with MTSU. We published several faculty pieces last year, and we would be happy to do so again.
Right.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Laurie. Any other question? Lauren is asking again, is there a way to have students bring proof of visiting tutors in the center? Because we'd like to see some proof.
Yes, that's a very good question, and I should have said that. After every session, our students are emailed something called a client report form, a CRF. The CRF will detail what the students worked on with their tutor and recommendations that the tutor made for them to revise their papers. So every student gets this at the end of every session, and they can present that to their instructor for proof of attendance.
Lauren says thank you.
Oh, yes. And they have to check their, the other inbox, there's the focused, and then there's the
external.
Yeah, the external. Yes, in the external box. So sometimes students miss that, but tell them to check the external box.
All right.
Any other questions,
No question.
John?
Yeah.
Dr. Hamby, thank you for being with us today. Thank you all to the Zoom room. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.